What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Well, we got a lot to get to today. Arkansas obviously coming off a 63-57 loss to number 6 Kentucky. That was disappointing, although the effort was there. Maybe the effort will be there when they go play Missouri on Wednesday, which is 0-7 in the SEC. No Devo Davis. No Devo Davis. How will you remember Devo Davis's time at Arkansas? We'll discuss that a little bit as well. And, of course, baseball 3 weeks away. Arkansas just wrapped up a big recruiting weekend. And we're going to talk to Danny West about that, of course, also. It was a big junior day. And spring football is probably March 7th, something like that. So we're going to talk about all that and more on today's episode of Hog Sports Live. Have I told you guys how many ways there are to watch and listen to the show? You can watch on YouTube, where we're streaming live right now. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube page, be sure to do so. Take a moment, subscribe, set it to where you're alerted anytime we upload a new video. Also available on Facebook. Be one of 90,000 Razorback fans to join us on our Facebook page. Follow us there. Apple Podcasts, if you haven't left us a 5-star review, we'd love to have that from you also. Also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. And, of course, Hog Sports is just $1 right now for your first month. HawgSports.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Go check us out if you haven't done so already. With spring football coming up, you know you're going to want that inside information with everything that's going on. And nobody does it like Hog Sports. Just come check us out. Devo. How will you remember Devo Davis? I will remember Devo probably as the guy that broke down emotionally after Arkansas beat Kansas, talking about how the team had struggled and all that stuff. That's how I would probably choose to remember him. It's disappointing the way it's ended. It feels like he's kind of, gone back and forth and, maybe had some other issues. And, I don't want to get into all the speculation and all that kind of stuff. Devo averaged 8.8 points a game, 4.1 rebounds. Arkansas doesn't make the Elite Eight his freshman year unless he hits that big shot. There are times where things that Devo did were very frustrating. And I'm right there with you. He was definitely an unorthodox player. There were other times where it was just beautiful. It was so unorthodox, some of the things that he would pull off. But, it just hasn't. It's just kind of a manifestation of, I think, everything that's happened this season. And, Arkansas put this team together, and it just didn't work out. I mean, I think Eric Musselman probably the first to tell you, maybe behind the scenes or something, it just didn't work out. Now, there's been some reports out there, by the way, that, some of the reasons for Arkansas's struggles have to do with NIL money and players not getting what they were promised. I can tell you my sources say that's absolutely not true. However, looking forward, looking ahead, maybe NIL isn't quite where it needs to be in terms of the pace for last year for basketball. Maybe that's an area where it's not quite where it used to be, and part of that can be team success right now. Obviously, people want to see results. Some of it could also be football success. I think we could all assume this anyway, that all sports are going to be impacted by the success of the football team when it comes to NIL. It's like a trickle down, because football, is whether you think it's Arkansas is a basketball school or a baseball school, it's football that really pays the bills. So that's something to think about. Like, is Arkansas basketball going to have the same access to the NIL it had last year? But the reports that players are disgruntled over not getting paid what they were promised and stuff, my sources say that's completely false. Unfortunate deal with Devo Davis, but Arkansas's got to move on. 63-57 losers to Kentucky. No moral victories. It was good to see him fight a little bit. Arkansas's got problems offensively. They did battle on defense. Defense is attitude. And obviously at the end of the game, a lot of that stuff, Kentucky went like 5 of 7, the last 240 from the floor. And Arkansas, what did they do? Like 1 of 5 or something from the floor. And I think it was Mekhi Mitchell's shot at the end, the last minute something. And, obviously you're not going to win close games finishing like that. But at least the defensive intensity was there for most of the game. Musselman pointed that out afterwards, that, that was, he's going to have to go tell them that, hey, the effort was there, but you lost, and now we got to go get ready for Missouri. Missouri is 0-7. That game is at 7:30 on SEC Network from Columbia, Missouri. 0-7 in SEC play. This is a game Arkansas can get. If they come back and play with the same level of intensity it is on the road, and that's always going to be difficult, even for a team that's 0-7. But if they can play with the same level of intensity, maybe they can pull off that win. I mean, it's crazy, kind of what we've seen out of this team all year. Beating Purdue in that exhibition game, who's Purdue's ranked number 2 in the country, beating Duke early in the season. I think November 29th, beating Duke, and Duke is currently number 12 nationally, and then playing well against Kentucky. Kentucky started off 1 of 16 from the floor. Now you say they just didn't get off to a very good start, but also, some of that's Arkansas. But they started 1 of 16 from the floor, and then obviously, just battled back, and then, showed why they're the better team at the end of the game. So that's basketball in a nutshell. After that January 31st game, you got Baton Rouge playing LSU. February 3rd, that's on ESPN2. That's an 11 o'clock game on Saturday. And then you get an off time during the middle of the week, so you don't play Wednesday or Tuesday. And then you play Georgia and Bud Walton Arena on February 10th. So that's the next 3 games coming up for Arkansas: at Missouri, January 31st, LSU the 3rd, and Georgia on the 10th. Arkansas, I mean, they're not a very good offensive team. They're currently ranked 9th in the SEC in scoring per game. I would have to assume that's down significantly now in SEC-only play. Through those 7 games, they're averaging 75.3 points per game. I mean, they failed to top 60 a couple times, this in the SEC slate. So not a very good scoring team, as you might expect. They're not a very good assist team. They rank 9th in scoring. They rank 11th in assists per game right now with 11.4, and that's a number that's also gone down since SEC play. Not a very good shooting team, 43.8%. Wouldn't have expected that really from the guards that they brought in, guys that were real good shooters overall and good three-point shooters. Arkansas is 11th in three-point shooting, 31.7%, and they're terrible on three-point defense. Last check, they were like 208 nationally on three-point defense. This is a team that a couple of years ago was number 1 in the nation in three-point defense. Hasn't been a great free throw shooting team, ranked 9th in the SEC, 71.8%. Again, with the guards that they brought in, you thought that they would be a pretty good free throw shooting team just based on their percentages coming in. Defensively, they're not rebounding well, 36.3%. They did rebound. They did out-rebound Kentucky, and that's definitely notable. Kentucky's got some size, obviously, but Arkansas played pretty physical. I mean, to go without Trevin Brazile and to have Mekhi Mitchell play the game that he played, we got to give a shout-out to Mekhi. It was his best game all season. Where has that been? 13 points, 12 rebounds. Jalen Graham did some good things. He was in early foul trouble. And Chandler Lawson pulled down 7 rebounds. So you got some good play out of those guys. To me, it doesn't sound like Brazile's coming back anytime soon. I mean, the guy didn't practice all last week and, after the game. And so after the Ole Miss game where they, got out rebounded pretty good there. But he didn't, and Ole Miss isn't a great rebounding team, which is, none of this stuff makes sense this season. I mean, like we can sit here and go over all these statistics and stuff, but like you knew that Ole Miss wasn't a good rebounding team in the Wednesday game, and Arkansas was going to, they were going to have a great rebounding effort against Arkansas because it seems like what everybody does poorly, they do well against Arkansas. But, yeah, I mean, they actually rebounded the game pretty well. They actually rebounded the ball pretty well against Kentucky, which was a bit surprising. But again, nothing should really surprise you with this team aside from if they were to beat somebody. They don't do a good job stealing the ball, only 5.2 steals per game. The only thing that they've done really well at this season is blocks. And I don't know if they're still leading the country in blocks, but they were at least heading into the Ole Miss game. I haven't checked on it, but they're leading the SEC with 6.7 blocks per game. And that's a strategy that Musselman has taken, tried to get more vertical because, they changed the rule with the charge where it starts when the plant foot is set versus when you go airborne. So they, if you notice, you don't see a lot of charges anymore. I always thought that they should expand the restricted area because I want to see people get dunked on more really. But, he's kind of changed how they play weak side defense, and they've gotten a lot more blocks this year as a result. So some coaching working. Muss is a great coach. I don't care what anybody says. I know people are frustrated with the way the team has gone right now, and I look back at the history of this program and how long it's been since they've finished nationally ranked back-to-back years, how long it had been since they'd won 28 games in a season, how long it's been since they'd been to 3 straight Sweet 16s. Only one other coach had done it. and Nolan Richardson. I mean, there's so many things that you look at that Musselman has done in his time here that have been pretty impressive. And some people have different ideas of how they should approach building their roster. Go out and build it through the high school ranks. Well, if you go build it through the high school ranks, if you get good players, they're going to go to the NBA soon. So you still have to pay players on your current roster too. You don't just get to say, okay, they're here, I don't have to pay them now. You have to pay your players. That's just the way college athletics work now. I don't like the system right now. I think it's ridiculous when you think about, so I can't remember who had a tweet recently, but it just makes so much sense when you look at the situation of these, coaches and universities making millions upon millions of dollars, and it's up to you, the fans and the boosters, to pay the players. It doesn't make any sense. The structure, and there's no transparency at all. You don't know exactly where your money's going, and the whole NIL deal is just. It's a disaster, in my opinion. I don't like it. I love college athletics, but I don't like the way NIL is going right now. I went out and watched a little baseball scrimmage on Sunday. 6-2 Cardinal over Gray, if that matters at all. Baseball starts February 16th. They've got 4 games lined out against James Madison. Probably, just based on what Dave Van Horn said the other day in his press conference, probably not going to play 4 games, but, hope to get 3 of those in, I think. And then you've got the college baseball series in Arlington, Globe Life Field. Start with Oregon State on February 23rd, Oklahoma State February 24th, and Michigan on the 25th. So baseball just right around the corner. It was chilly out there. It was like 42 degrees, but they were out there. All right, let's get to Danny West. We want to talk a little bit about recruiting. That's the title of today's show. And I know all you guys are interested in the future, at least the diehards out there. I always find the diehards are interested in not what's going to happen in the game coming up, but interested in what's going to happen for the future of the program, and that is where Danny West comes in. If you don't follow Danny West, you got to follow him at Danny West 24/7, almost at 50,000 Twitter followers. X followers. I said I was going to stop calling it Twitter because it's X. 50,000 X followers. Danny, how you doing? Man? You all right, man?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We're just talking about the state of Arkansas athletics and just, it's been disappointing. It was a disappointing football season, basketball season. To come into the season ranked 14th nationally and just the way things have gone, albeit, they had a pretty good effort. Again, no moral victories, but had a pretty good effort against Kentucky. And then baseball, please save us, Lord.
Thought you said you were doing good.
I am doing good. I'm still on the bright side of things. You're probably right. I ought to reevaluate. Why do I feel good given everything?
Right.
Yeah, it's depressing. But baseball's right around the corner, and they ought to be pretty good, right?
No pressure, Dave. Go win it all, though.
Yeah, exactly. If you could ever do it, this would be the year to take it.
Yeah. So, everything's been good my way. Coming out of a really good junior day for them. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was their best one by far. Really, those first they had 4 before this one. I want to say this was their 5th. So I felt like the first few were really just kind of so-so. You had a guy here or there. No disrespect to anybody that visited. You know what I mean, though.
Right.
Omarion Robinson came up, Montario Elston, Jack Lange. Here and there they had a few studs coming in. But this past weekend, Trey, it was one stud after another. I know it's harder for people to get really excited when we're talking about sophomores and juniors in high school. But as you've heard me say before, this is kind of where you really put in your work this time of year, because a lot of these guys we're talking about that you don't care about right now, you will hear in about 10 months probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just let's talk about some of them. Who were some of the standouts that visited? You just kind of take it away, Danny.
I'll rattle them off. We'll start with Colton Yarborough, 2026 defensive end out of Durant, Oklahoma. He came up, I want to say last July, he came up for the cookout. Returned to campus this past weekend, number 63 overall prospect in the country out of Durant, Oklahoma, nearby too. So just got tagged in another tweet there. We'll move right on to Michael Clayton, who just tweeted out some pictures from his visit on Saturday. He's a 2026 quarterback out of Seminole High School in Sanford, Florida, Miami, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh. He had a lot of really good things to say. Another 2026, Grant Smith, quarterback out of Spring, Texas, Grand Oaks High School, I should say. He was offered by Coach Petrino at Texas A&M. Petrino offered him again as soon as he got to Arkansas. He's got TCU and Baylor and Texas Tech, several. You can also read his thoughts on the visit there on the site. Carius Kern, Trey, the number one player in Arkansas. I'm sure everybody's he's going to have everybody's attention real soon if he doesn't already. But 2025, so we're talking about a junior offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I like him on defense. So does Arkansas so far, from what I understand. But he's out of Marion. Like I said, number one player in the state, according to 24/7 Sports. 6'4", 305. You watch his film, and if you're not sold on him, I don't know what to tell you. I think he can go just about anywhere. I'm just blown away with how good this kid is. Mm-hmm. He's clearly number one in my book as well for the 2025 in-state crowd. He had a good visit. Brock Heath, heard from Brock this morning, kid out of Overland Park, Kansas. Eric Mateos' old stomping ground. So he went in last month and offered this kid at Blue Valley Northwest. Brock Heath is a 2025 offensive lineman. He's got Nebraska, Missouri, just about everybody around that part of the country, of course. So I could keep going. They had Brody Watley, a 2025 defensive lineman. Markel Ford, 2025 D-back out of Mesquite, Texas, Horn High School. He's got everybody, buddy. Oklahoma, TCU, Oregon, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas. So a lot of kids like that in 2025 and 2026. I thought it was notable just to, all the names kind of sound redundant at some point and all the offers, but to kind of give you an overview, they had some of the best players from Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri. They had Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. I mean, when you're talking about that many states for a junior day, that's a success in my opinion. It's tough to get guys in the car and make them drive all the way to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So you need to celebrate those small victories when you got them.
Yeah, and it's always a good sign when they actually make it. Danny, who had the best name out of the visitors?
The name game this week.
Yeah. There's a great one in there.
I told Baz Friday morning. I was going through some of these, but I know where you're headed. Cannon Pig.
Cannon Pig, man. If your name is Pig, P-I-G-G, Cannon Pig. I mean, it always bothered me, like Pig Prather and DJ Hogg and DJ Arkansas. You remember him? Like those guys never ended up being Razorbacks.
That's kind of on Arkansas, man. I feel like DJ wanted to come to Arkansas.
Did he do anything, Danny? Did he have a career?
You know what? I'm not sure where DJ is, but he's got a little brother, Dylan, Arkansas. As I look him up, I want to see his status. But he's a stud now. I think Dylan's got a lot of offers. Baylor, Missouri, whole bunch of them. TCU's up there for Dylan, but yeah, he's next. So may not be done with the Arkansas boys yet. He's out of Denton, Ryan, Texas. Ryan High School down in Denton, Texas. 6'1", 190, Dillon, Arkansas. Check him out if you haven't.
So, Danny, some of these guys that have visited, obviously, you got, you mentioned Colton Yarborough. This guy's,
stud.
Top 100 prospect, out of Durant, Oklahoma, 6'5", 220. Is there a chance for a guy like that to end up at Arkansas? Where do you see the status?
When you look at that offer list, well, first of all, you said it. He's out of Oklahoma. That's the first part. But what's interesting on this one is you see LSU, you see Georgia, Miami's on there, Oregon. Oregon's another school that can go anywhere now, as we've seen. And you don't see Oklahoma or Oklahoma State yet on that list. So typically when somebody asks me about any Oklahoma kid, my first question is, has OU offered? And so far, that's no. So you move on to step number 2. And I think it's still going to be really tough. Most of the time, Oklahoma is one of those states, kind of like Louisiana a little bit. If they don't stay at home, they're going to a blue blood in another state. They're really hard for Arkansas to come across a Felix Jones.
Yeah, we have categories like hot, warm, cold, cool, I believe is how we listed on 24/7. I wanted to ask you about Carius Kern. Kern right now, we have him listed with Arkansas, Georgia, and LSU as being warm right now, and everybody else listed as cool. Do you think that's accurate for him? And where do you think Arkansas stands? Deke Adams, Cody Kennedy's also, or not Cody Kennedy, but Eric Mateos also, I guess, would be involved in him also.
Yeah, I talked to Carius briefly last week. He told me that Arkansas, Ole Miss, LSU, Mississippi State, and Tennessee are the ones that are showing the most attention right now. So, you know, it is still early. I talk about these names like they're all deciding next week. You know, of course they're not. But, you know, I think if you can keep Georgia out of there, if Georgia ever decides to really make a push at him, you know, that's the one thing of note that I would see in that group that he listed there. Georgia would concern me as they would with anybody right now. But
right.
Ole Miss, obviously, they've just got tons of momentum. And but you know, Arkansas is hanging in there. They've had him on campus a few times now, and it's going to take a good season, I would imagine. So we'll have to wait and see.
It won't be too long though, Danny, before the wave of commitments starts hitting. I mean, like June, really, right? That's when you see them all, you know, every month. But when June, like the summer months come, that's kind of become like the hot months, June, July, right?
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. You know, I know it's tough to get excited about them right now, but man, before you know it, you're sitting there wondering, well, you know, Brody Watley visited us twice, and we didn't get him, you know, and you start to get mad about some of these. But yeah, and I try to tell people all the time, Cash Courtney, 2025 offensive lineman, you know, that's another guy that he just picked up an Arkansas offer 5 days ago. Nobody's talking about him right now, but if you let Texas Tech beat you on him in December, then now we care about him, right? So, hey, a lot of these I would expect to return after, of course, the February dead period, as we know, runs from, I want to say February 5th through March 4th. So no visits in there. But as soon as that contact period opens back up again, the quiet period in March, I mean, you go back and check some of these lists and see who's making a return visit. You could start to piece it together pretty quickly as to, you know, which one of these guys they're probably going to end up with.
Yeah. I mean, you just look back like at, you know, when some of the guys committed in the last class. You had Charleston Collins. He committed in April. KJ Jackson committed in April. And then, you know, Selman Bridges and Charleston Collins, both those guys were July commitments. So it's not like it used to be back in the day where everybody would commit like, you know, pretty late in the summer during the season, and then a big wave in like December and January. It's the calendar's obviously changed.
I'll tell you something on that note, Trey, just, you know, putting it out there. We all know that Coach Pitt didn't have a great year this past year. So I'm a little bit curious going into this cycle. Typically the trend has been by the end of July, after that cookout, they're just about done. I mean, they might have 3 or 4 spots left, but for the most part, they're pretty much done going into fall camp. And now with the dynamic of, you know, he's a little bit on the hot seat. So I'm curious to see how quickly they get to that, you know, we're used to seeing 17 to 20 commit range. Do they get there as fast this summer? Yeah. Or do they have to go prove it a little bit on the field? I think it's one of the underlying storylines I'll be watching.
What'd they end up with last year, Danny? 18?
17 or
17?
Technically.
I mean, Jeremy Cook is. I don't know if he's like going to sign with Arkansas or what. I mean, he committed in June or July and didn't sign in the early period, so that might be a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, as we approach, I think it's February 7th, isn't it?
Signing day is next week, buddy. We haven't even mentioned that because you know there's so little. Kind of going back to what we just talked about, most of the work is done. You know, now, especially in December with the early signing period, we're sitting here talking about signing day next week and nobody really on the radar. So
I wonder if Sam will do – I wonder if he will do a signing day press conference since nobody is technically signing. But there's, you know, all the transfers that joined late that he didn't really talk about publicly. So maybe he'll do something for them. But really the only recruit that was on the radar was Jamarian Burnett, who didn't, you know, they ended up, I guess, not doing the visit with him because they got Jaquindon Jackson out of Utah, running back. So, I mean, I wonder if he'll – there was one year where he didn't do a press conference because everybody signed early, and this was before all the transfer portal stuff started going crazy. But again, Danny, what did I say earlier in the year about what the formula was for Arkansas? Like 20 recruits. Pittman said they want to sign 25, but it's 2010, and right now it's 18-13 or 17-13. 13 transfers, 17, and probably they still need one or two defensive tackles. They need a linebacker. They need another offensive lineman at least, I think. So, it's going to be pretty balanced with the recruits coming in and this group. Hey, Danny, I wanted to ask you this too. Obviously, spring football, I've got them starting on March 7th. That's not an official date. It's just based on, the past and, what a little bird told me about them having 5 practices before spring break like they had last year. And so that kind of putting it all together and about how I know they do the schedule, that puts them probably March 7th starting. They're in their 8-week training cycle right now. So this is an important time for guys that want to lose weight, gain strength, all those types of things, especially some of the new guys who want to make an impact early. Everybody, I think it's all but 4 guys, isn't it, out of this incoming class that are enrolling early? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I've kind of turned the page a little bit. It's hard for me to remember a month ago. But, I believe that's right. I could try to remember them off the top. I want to say the 2 linebackers, Wyatt Simmons and Bradley Shaw, they're not going to enroll early or did not. Cross Johnson, wide receiver. He's not an early guy. And there was one more.
Out of the recruiting class? Charleston Collins, Selman Bridges, Ashton Bethel Roman, Bradley Shaw, you mentioned. KJ Jackson's coming. Braylon Russell, Kavion Henderson, Justin Logan, Julius Pope, Tevis Metcalf, C.J. Brown, Zuri Madison, Wyatt Simmons, you mentioned. Cross Johnson, you mentioned.
It might be ABR. I think it's Ashton.
I think you're right. I believe it is Ashton Bethel Roman, who is the number 3 ranked commitment in the class, number 134 overall prospect nationally on the 24/7 Sports ranking, 27 wide receiver, 24 in Texas. So just 4 guys out of that group. And then, out of the transfers, it's everybody, right?
Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah, so it's 14 transfers actually is what it is now. So you have probably 17 high school recruits depending on what happens with Jeremy Cook, and 14 transfers. And looking at, it's going to be a 50-50. It's going to be half the incoming class is going to be transfers, and half of it's going to be high school recruits. And that's where they've landed. I don't
take that.
I don't know if that's the way to build a healthy long-term roster, Danny. I think there's cons and negatives to it. Like, you would like to build up, obviously, through the high school ranks. I think the 2010 formula is ideal, but Arkansas's roster isn't healthy, and this is what you have to do. And I also think this is how you close the gap. So maybe the 2010 idea that I had in my head, maybe that isn't the right answer either. Maybe it's maybe it's half and half. I don't know if that's ideal year to year, though. Basketball is different, I think, but basketball has had success doing, bringing in the vast majority of players being transfers, a few returning guys and high school guys. It didn't work this year, but it has worked in the past. It's worked for other programs. But I don't know if that's necessarily a healthy way for football, because football is so much about development, in your program and in your system, and then player development also. So, but it's going to be an interesting year, Danny. It's do or die time.
Over it there, but I did mention 2 guys. The linebackers. Man, you wish Bradley Shaw and Wyatt Simmons were going through spring. You know what? Because this is a year where, they still might have to. They still might have to play. We'll see what they do in the transfer in May, but Justin Logan obviously is the 3rd linebacker. He's going through spring ball, so maybe he's a guy that surprises you. But I think there's so much benefit in that, especially for a linebacker.
Yeah,
a little bit different for skill guys. We've seen guys like Quincy show up later and still go out there and have no trouble on either side. So the linebacker, man, especially given the needs right now, I wish I wish at least one more of them was going through spring.
Yeah, well, you've got, the two sophomores from last year, Spence and Sanford. And then you got Xavier Sorey coming in. And Xavier Sorey's a redshirt junior, I believe. So he's a little bit older, but he had like 19 tackles last year for Georgia. I know that they like Spence. I know that they like Sanford. And Sorey too. Obviously, he was a former 5-star recruit, but it's a lot of hoping, isn't it? It's a lot of hoping that those guys are what you want. I think those two sophomores have a lot of ability. I liked what I saw them at them in spring practice and the limited time they played, especially Spence.
Good things happen, especially Spence when he was on the field.
Yeah,
good things seem to happen every time.
Yeah, but it's a young group, and really would like to see them go out. Hey, grab one more guy who's had 50, 60, 70 tackles plus in his career, has logged significant playing time, something like even an Antonio Greer, a guy like that. That would be, to me, a real benefit to the linebacker room to add a little bit more depth there. And would they have four players transfer out? I mean, that's a lot of turnover at that spot. So I thought, one linebacker, defensive line, and I'll get into that too in a little bit. You got anything else you want to add, Danny?
No, I think that's it. Just for this weekend, I'll get out of here on this. But no actual junior day visit per se, but my understanding there will be a virtual visit for maybe a handful of guys. So not sure how much content will come out of that. But
virtual visits.
Hey, you never know. Virtual visits
to
close
Zoom,
it out. And then, of course, that would be my guess. And then, of course, dead period next Monday, followed by what I'm assuming will be a really uneventful signing day next Wednesday.
Yeah. Danny, did you ever hear a Zoom before COVID?
No, never did.
I mean, to me, that's like the one thing that came out of COVID, and you're just like, wow,
that took off.
This helps. Because we do all the press conferences. Yeah, I mean, it used to be like, we all used to have to go to the press conference for a football practice, and we all had to be there. If you wanted to get a question in, if you wanted to get video from the press conference and stuff. And now, I always go to the press conferences for football just because, I like to lead the questioning, and I feel like I know what the fans want asked and what I want to ask. So, but now, everybody else can, watch and
anywhere,
do the work from wherever they are. It definitely improves, I think, for the fans, the amount of content that we're able to get out, and the amount of people we're able to have work on it versus being there, driving back and forth, and all the things that you had to do previously. So, all right, brother. Appreciate you, Danny.
All right, man.
All right, everybody. That's Danny West. I'm going to flash him right up there again real quick so you can remember to follow him. Danny is almost at 50,000 Twitter followers. X followers. Dang it. XXX. No, don't say XXX. Where are you going here with this? It's not that kind of show. All right, everybody. It's just X. Just one singular X. All right. I'm going to get that right up there with Pound with Passion. All right, everybody. So, spring football schedule. Let's talk about that a little bit because it's coming up, and obviously we still got basketball going on. Plenty to do in basketball still. It's just not real encouraging, is it? And then baseball coming up. Please save us, Dave Van Horn, as Danny said. This would be the year to if I don't even want to think about that. Baseball is going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, everybody. Don't worry about baseball. But, yeah, man, shudder to think about that. Spring football coming up, though. And there's a lot of excitement with the newness of spring football. And as I've said before, you may consider this a baseball program or a basketball program like everybody was saying after football. But I can promise you, and I can see the analytics and I see the traffic, even though they're 4-8, this is still very much a football state. Very much is. That's where we see the majority of our traffic. And, I always say, it's kind of all hands on deck for us at football. But spring football starting, from what I can gather, on the 9th. On the 7th. Here's how I've got it broken down. All right, March 7th is a Thursday. So they'll go 5 practices before spring break. I went over this a few shows ago, but I'm just going to redo it. So Thursday, March 7th, Friday, March 8th, Sunday, March 10th, Tuesday, March 12th, Thursday, March 14th. Those are the 5 practices that I believe on that schedule will be before spring break. Now, I don't know what kind of media availability we'll have. If you guys remember last year at the end of football season, when things started kind of going south, when Dan Enos was fired, when they moved Kenny Guyton to offensive coordinator, football practices were closed from that point on. And that's not what we had seen. We haven't had football practices closed during the week since maybe Bobby Petrino, and Bobby kept them open for a while, and then towards the end of it, he ended up closing them during the season that last year. But aside from that, Chad Morris, John L., Bielema, they all had open practices for us. And by open practices, I mean 15 to 30 minutes of practice. I would hope during the spring that they open. That's one thing that I always talk about Bobby Petrino when he was here. Spring football was completely open. Completely open. Like, we watched every moment of every practice. Petrino, it wasn't so much that he's worried about knowing the plays that he's going to call. You just don't know the plays in the order that he's going to call and the down and distance that he's going to call. I ordered his book. His book is going to take after spring football for his book to get in. So I need to find another way. It was on Amazon, and it'll be here March 14th or something. So Amazon's usually pretty fast, but not with Bobby Petrino's book. So then they'll go on spring break. It's 18th through the 22nd. That's the Monday through the Fridays. But actually, spring break, people will start heading out on March 15th on that Friday. So you got March 15th until, the 24th, I believe, would be the Sunday. So then they'll pick up, and then that's when you start going the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule. So you do Tuesday practice, Thursday practice, Saturday you would hold, most likely a scrimmage. There's also a period where you, slowly add more pads and stuff, and that'll all happen before spring break. So you go Tuesday the 26th, the 28th, the 30th. So that's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Same deal after that, April 2nd, 4th, 6th, 9th, 11th. And then they'll have a Friday practice if it's like last year. So you go Thursday the 11th, Friday the 12th, and then April 13th is when I believe they'll hold the red-white scrimmage. The difference this year also from last year, aside from having a similar style of schedule, and it moves up 2 days because it's a leap year this year, but they're going to practice in the morning. So last year they held practices around 3:40, 3:45 during the weekdays, and then the weekends on Saturday it was they'd have 8:55, 10:10, or noon were the different times they had practices. The red-white game was at noon last year also. This year we're talking more like early in the morning. So, and I asked Pittman about that a few press conferences ago. It's been maybe a couple months ago, and he said that they were looking at doing that. And from last I heard, that's still the plan, and that requires, working with your class schedule, because obviously these guys are students. They go to school still. They're professionals now, but they go to school also, and you have to work around the class schedule. So you may have some instances where somebody has something that interferes. I don't know if they have any early lab classes and stuff, but especially when you talk about the Tuesday, Thursday schedule, you can schedule your classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I always used to try to, I love to do Tuesday, Thursday only classes when I was in school, and then I'll have Monday, Wednesday, Friday open if possible, maybe a lab or something like that on one of those days. But, you can work around it pretty good nowadays. So morning practices are expected this year. Quarterback battle, I think, headlines a lot of things. I would say the quarterback battle and all the new faces. Those are the big things that jump out to me about why, even after a 4-8 season, I would be excited about football. I'm always excited about football. Even though things were just, depressing and, they went the way they did last year, it was disappointing. I still love football. I still love college football and still love covering Razorback football, even when they stink. Even as frustrating as it's been, last year and, of course, during the Chad Morris era. And, there have been some frustrating times covering Razorback football. Thinking all the way back to, the last years of Nutt, that transition period, that final year, and just how toxic everything was. Still enjoyable, and as strange as that sounds, and maybe that's why I'm still in this business after almost 21 years. But, just as big as all the new players coming in, I think the quarterback battle is a big headline. Getting a good look at Taylon Green. That's what I want to see. Is Taylon Green going to come out there right out from the jump and say, okay, it's me, I'm the guy? A lot of people think that Malachi Singleton could be a guy that, kind of dark horses, because a lot of the talk has been Jacoby Criswell, Taylon Green. Which one of those guys? Criswell obviously was the backup last year. We saw him a good bit against Missouri when KJ went down. So I think the initial thought when they go out there, first snap is going to be taken by Jacoby Criswell. He's the oldest returning player. And I could see next snap being taken by Malachi Singleton, just in the vein of thought that Taylon Green is coming from somewhere else and he's got to earn his place. That's kind of been a policy that Pittman adapted really since I think that Jaden Hazelwood situation where he came in, he was right off the bat, first string, and I think it rubbed some of the players wrong. And what's interesting about that is I didn't see him do that with other players when he brought them in from the transfer portal. I saw guys like John Ridgway started out on the third team, when he came in. So, but anyway, that's kind of a policy that Pittman has adopted, and so I would expect that to kind of be the order. Malachi Singleton coming in second after Jacoby Criswell, and then Taylon Green probably after that. And then KJ Jackson also. Get a good look at the freshman quarterback. It's a good time to get a look at, some of the future guys in spring football. But, how good is Taylon Green right off the bat? That's a big question. Is he going to assert himself in spring? Is it going to be something that drags on until fall camp? I could almost guarantee it will drag on through fall camp, especially with a new guy coming in. And part of the reason is, you want to keep the competition going. You want to keep the guys working, obviously. But, you don't want anybody to enter the transfer portal. Like if Taylon Green comes in and he's named the starter, then you start watching Jacoby Criswell. Every quarterback who doesn't start transfers. Every quarterback who doesn't start at a program, either they give up football or they transfer. Think about it. They're all going to transfer. And that's nothing new at this position. Quarterback, you can go back to, as far as I can think, like Barry Lunny and Robert Reed. Every quarterback that I've ever remembered watching, as a child growing up on to now, every time the backup quarterback hasn't won the job, there's been an opening and the backup quarterback didn't win. Almost every single time they've left the program. Robert Johnson ended up moving wide receiver. But think about it. I mean, they all transfer. So especially once you get passed over by somebody younger, you end up transferring out. So I would expect this battle to continue on through camp. Another group, I'm, obviously the offensive line, intrigued to see how things go there. And, does Addison Nichols start out at center? Is there somebody else they're eyeing at center? Or does he work at both guard and center? I think all those are interesting questions. But, defensive line, I think, is also an interesting group because you've got some young players that have the opportunity to emerge. Quincy Rhodes, I think, is a guy that you really watch, 6'6", 289 pounds, just a freshman last year. And Ian Gerfard. Ian Gerfard was, he's 6'5", every bit of it, 394 pounds on last year's roster. That was a summertime roster, heading into August. I mean, he was I expected him to be kind of dumpy looking, to be honest, just way out of shape. I've seen other players who are, not that big, but 360 or something coming in, 370, and, dumpy ankles and just not looking in shape. This dude looks solid. I was surprised how good he looked, especially seeing him stand next to Anthony Booker, who's obviously transferred since. He's at Texas Tech now. But seeing him standing next to him, and Booker's listed at 6'4", what was Booker, 351, something like that, and just dwarfed by Gerfard. So I want to see how Gerfard looks, how much different his body looks. He's absolutely going to have to help because he's probably number 4 defensive tackle right now because you've had so many guys enter the transfer portal. You've got 5 defensive tackles. Let's see if I can name them. You've got Cam Ball, Eric Gregory, who started every game. Cam Ball, who started 6 games and started most of the end of the season. So those two. Kiwi Rose is back. I don't think Kiwi ever announced anything that he's back, but we obviously found through sources. And you've got Ian Gerfard, who I would have number 4, and then J.J. Hollingsworth. And this is a big 8 weeks for J.J. Hollingsworth, too, because he's about 273 last year and needs about 20 more pounds, before he can impact. He was a redshirt freshman last year and didn't really play. I don't think he got on the field. But that's a guy that they could use, to step up. And then you wonder about, Caleb James. Could Caleb James, who played at 6'4", 276 last year as a freshman, actually didn't play, but he was 6'4", 276. He didn't see any snaps. He redshirted. But is he a guy that could maybe slide inside? He's a bigger body guy as a freshman, defensive end. Anton Junkaj. I only saw a video of him lined up at end on the right side. But that's an interesting, is Junkaj going to be on the right side, going after the quarterback's blind side, which is where Landon Jackson generally lined up last year. You move Landon Jackson to the left side. I think that's probably the way you go. Junkaj had 15 sacks last year, 21 and a half, something like that, tackles for loss. I think that's probably the right combination. And probably, I would say, maybe you consider Quincy Rhodes playing that left defensive end spot behind him. What's going to happen with Jashad Stewart? After his arrest, he's indefinitely suspended, but is he? He wouldn't be indefinitely suspended if he wasn't part of the team, right? They just say he's not part of the team, so he's still on the team in that thought. So, yeah, and then. Yeah, I wonder about some of the young guys like Charleston Collins. Is he a guy that's ready to come in? Kavion Henderson, is he ready to come in and make an impact? Nico Davier also. Nico's a junior now. What kind of impact could he have? Also, he was a guy that was thought maybe could end up as a defensive tackle, but I think he's pretty well settled in at defensive end now. So, the numbers are at defensive end are fine. They lost a lot. They've got some really good talented guys coming in, obviously. Defensive tackle is just, to me, there's no reason you should be like, and Hollingsworth could end up being a good player, but to me, you need to feel like comfortable. This guy's physically ready to come in and play. And there's no reason your fifth guy at defensive tackle in the transfer portal era shouldn't be ready to come in and play. Because as I've said it on this show many times, you should be able to build a perfect roster through the transfer portal. And that's the 3 deep plus one at every spot. There's no reason you should be short at a spot, numbers-wise. You may not have gotten the talent you want at a certain spot, but you can darn sure get through practice and run 3 deep and 2 spot if you want to, because you've gotten the right number of guys to fill your roster out in the transfer portal. So just a couple of things that jump out to me. Obviously, we could go down every position group. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape in the secondary. I think they'll be at least as good as they were last year, even though they didn't really replace Al Walcott with a similar type of player. But everybody else who's back is a year older. There's some intriguing young guys who redshirted last year also. Brought a couple of guys in. Denico Slaughter from Tennessee, I think, would be a guy that probably step right in and maybe get in that rotation a little bit. I think they did some good things at cornerback. I think, losing Dwight McGlothern is definitely not the best thing that ever happened, but Jalen Braxton is going to be a year older. How much better is he going to be? You've got Selman Bridges coming in, who was a big-time recruit out of the high school ranks. And, is it Marquise Robinson also coming in? So I think you put yourself in a situation in the secondary to where you should be about as good as you were last year, which the secondary was, pretty average by SEC standards last year. If you can get the offense going again and have, an average defense, then, I think they should probably reach some of the minimum goals that you have for this team of, I think beyond getting to a bowl game, I don't think just getting to a bowl game should be your goal. Bouncing back from the way last season was, getting to a quality bowl game, I think should be your goal with this team. And, if you do better than that on defense, then great. Linebacker, I think, has obviously got some questions, some potential, but some questions with the linebacker group. And then offensive line should be better. Surely, Lord. I mean, they brought in 3 very good players out of the portal, and everybody else generally is a year older. Brady Latham isn't coming back, but everybody else is generally older. And, you were relying on some younger, inexperienced guys last year who learned a lot of things the hard way. So hopefully being able to look back on that year and having an off season to work on those things and get stronger in the areas you need to get stronger, get better in the technique where you need to get better, and having a new face looking over you and Eric Mateos and, Sam Pittman's watchful eye, knowing like this was an issue last year. This is a group that played a big role in them giving up 47 sacks last season with a mobile quarterback. Tight end's going to be better. You got Luke Haz is a year older. Ty Washington is a year older. Both those guys are going to be healthy, obviously, and going through spring. And then you've got Andreas Paskey, who I think is going to provide a lot. They'll be better blocking. They were not a very good group blocking last year. They definitely had a hand in Arkansas giving up 47 sacks. I mean, they played a role. So did the running backs. How good is Jaquindon Jackson going to be? I like his toughness. I think he's going to come into this conference with something to prove. And I'm not so sure that Rocket Sanders looked at himself as having something to prove really last year. I think Jackson feels like he's got something to prove. Isaiah Augusta, I think, is a guy that finished really strong last year. DeBinion can be a really tough runner too. I'm not sure he's a lead SEC back, but he can be a guy that can help you and get you. I mean, he's had 100-yard games in the SEC. He had 100-yard games against Kansas. I believe he had 100. He might have had 99. But, and Braylon Russell, what can Braylon Russell bring? Dominic Johnson, another year away from the knee issue, as he shed the brace. Dominic did some good things at times last year. You just got to know how to use the guy properly, like, throwing screen passes to him, maybe not the best use of his ability. Wide receivers got everybody back except for Sam Bakke, who was injured all last year. Got everybody back and added Jordan Anthony. Should be better, right? Hopefully they use Isaac TeSlaa properly. I don't think they used him very well last year for his ability levels. Andrew Armstrong, obviously back. So I think I touched on every group. I didn't really intend to do that, but that's where things are right now. All right. Thank you to Danny West for hopping on with us. Appreciate all you guys watching and supporting us. If you haven't followed us at HawgSports.com, or if you haven't subscribed to HawgSports.com, you should do so. And, we check out our free content. We put free content out there. We also, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so. We put all the press conferences here. So if you are interested in, following along on post-game press conferences, midweek press conferences, and all that football, basketball, baseball, then you'll want to follow us at HawgSports.com, obviously, on YouTube, and go to the site, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can read our free content there. But if you're really interested in the inner workings of the program, what we have to say from our inside sources, what we're hearing from inside the program, everything that's going on in recruiting, stuff that's going on in the transfer portal, who they're genuinely targeting in the transfer portal, not just stuff that's floating by on Twitter, all those types of things, then you want to go to Hawg Sports, HAWGsports.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Thanks to Danny West for hopping on. Thanks to all of you for watching this show and making us your #1 rated podcast in the state of Arkansas. Certainly appreciate that. Give us a 5-star review if you haven't done so on Apple Podcasts. And this has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. That's everything I got to say today. Yeah, that's it. All right, everybody. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.